conservative new media viewers and Jeremy Lin fans around the world. What's going on? It's me, PFV The NBA Expert, and we're here to talk about the Jeremy Lin 2013 summer off-season update. What's the latest? The last time we talked to you guys, we talked about the possibility of J-Lin being moved, being traded from the team in a potential maneuver that might help Houston land Dwight Howard and maybe also land Chris Paul. Here's the latest with that, as I'm sure you guys are aware of or have heard. Chris Paul isn't going anywhere from the Los Angeles Clippers, and that is because the Clippers signed Doc Rivers, the former head coach of the Boston Celtics, to a contract. It was reported that Chris Paul wanted Doc Rivers to be the coach, and he got him. With that being done, it's very unlikely that Chris Paul is going anywhere. In fact, he will probably re-sign with the Clippers, and that's all set. And look, Doc Rivers is a great coach. And personally, I think that Doc Rivers is one of the best 5 coaches in the NBA, probably one of the best 3, along with Greg Popovich. And with George Karl now not coaching, I might say Doc Rivers is the second best coach in the NBA. He's a terrific coach, and that's going to help the Clippers substantially. What I've also heard regarding this situation with Dwight Howard is that there was a rumor or a possible idea that because Dwight Howard has expressed interest, apparently, in playing with Chris Paul, that maybe Blake Griffin and Eric Bledsoe could be traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Dwight Howard. Well, the latest I heard on that was Arash Markazi from ESPN is saying that Blake Griffin doesn't want any part of that trade. Blake Griffin wants to remain on the Clippers and was upset about the trade being mentioned. So, that's all very good news for Houston. Chris Paul's not coming. Oh, well, Chris Paul coming to Houston would be great news. But for Lin fans or Lin fans who want Jeremy to stay in Houston, it's very good news. Chris Paul's not coming to Houston, and Dwight Howard looks a little bit closer to coming to Houston based upon this information. He's not going to be able to team up with Chris Paul unless he goes to the Clippers, and it doesn't look like the Clippers want to make a deal with the Lakers to get Dwight Howard. And even if they wanted to make a deal to get Dwight Howard, the Lakers still might not do it, which means Houston is looking very available for Dwight Howard. I think there's a great chance Dwight Howard is going to sign with the Rockets. I do. Based upon things that I've seen, things that I've heard and read, I would put the chance at around 50%. The Lakers are not going to be serious contenders next year. They're too old, and Kobe Bryant is not going to be at his normal level next year. I say that because there was a study done that was recently put out, and it was of NBA players who suffer Achilles tendon tears like Kobe just did. And they said that in the first year back, the player isn't the same level. And so I don't think Kobe's going to be at that level. Not to mention Kobe's going to be 35 years old, and he's got a tremendous amount of mileage on him. So when you put the Lakers' age together with Kobe returning from injury, I just can't see the Lakers being a serious contender next year. So Dwight's got to know that. He knows that's the case. So if he comes to Houston, or is Houston going to be an instant contender? Yeah, actually, depending on what the other pieces are around them. But they're younger, and, Houston was good this last year, as we all know. They won, what was it, 1 or 2 games fewer than the Lakers, or the same, and that was with a new lineup. James Harden was new. Jeremy, of course, was new. They were very good, and they're young, which means they should improve. So Houston could be a contender next year. It's going to be tough. The good news for Houston is that they're in the West. San Antonio is a pretty old team. Oklahoma City, I don't think they're as good without James Harden. Even though they're good in the regular season, I don't think they're going to be as good in the playoffs. So there's a little bit of an opening there. And even if Houston isn't a real contender next year, well, neither are the Lakers, which means then you go into the next year. What are the Lakers going to look like in 2014, 2015? Nobody knows. They're going to have a lot of cap room, but who are they going to get? What's Kobe going to do? Now, I know the reputation for the Lakers is everybody wants to go play there. Everybody wants to go be in L.A. Well, it's a different owner now. It's not the legendary Jerry Buss any longer. Now it's Jim Buss. And the family, according to reports, is or has already faced an inheritance tax, which means there's not as much money as there used to be in the Buss family after Dr. Buss passed away. So it's not the same thing. It's not a sure thing. That's the easiest way to say it. Whereas if you go to Houston, you've got multiple young building blocks that are already in place, and you know they're going to be in place not only next year, but for years after that. James Harden, young. Chandler Parsons, young. Jeremy Lin, young. There's real talent there to build around. And I think Dwight is very serious in looking at Houston. And it's going to be interesting. I mean, certainly it will affect Jeremy. If Jeremy has somebody the level of Dwight Howard to play with, particularly in pick and rolls, that's going to very much help Jeremy's game. We all know in watching Omer Asik, who I like tremendously. Omer had trouble sometimes finishing on pick and rolls. If that's Dwight Howard, you're going to get a lot more finished pick and rolls, dunks rather than layups, dunks rather than missed layups, etc. And so it's going to be interesting. Free agency begins about 6 days from now when I'm making this video, which is actually 5 days. This is early Wednesday morning, 1:55 a.m. in the morning here on the East Coast of the United States, which is, I think it's still 12 hours apart unless there's been a time change. 1:55 p.m. on Wednesday, June 25th, 2013 in Taipei, Taiwan. I think I have the date right. I hope I do in terms of the 25. I believe that's correct. Okay, now, moving on from that. You guys know, and I've told you before, that I often will go on ClutchFans, and I just kind of go there, and there's always many Lin doubters, Lin haters on there. So I had to deal with more of them today, several of them, and, we took care of them, did our best with that, and you can see an example of that in the link in the video description below the video player. That's just one example. If you follow that thread, that link will lead you to a thread. If you look throughout that, the pages around and after that comment I made, you'll see where it's coming from. It's just the latest stuff, which is the anybody but Jeremy crowd, the people that just want Jeremy gone no matter what, for any reason. We just had to try to give them some facts, give them some information, and you guys know how difficult that can be with some of the Lin haters. But we'll just keep working at it, and Jeremy's going to keep doing his thing. Okay, now you see in the title, I said that Jeremy is working on his 3-point shot. Now, this information comes from Jeremy Lin's shooting coach, Doc Shepler, and JeremyLin.net. You will see a link in the video description below the video player to an article or post on JeremyLin.net. They got to speak with Doc Shepler. And I believe that Doc said Jeremy is shooting 79% from three in all situations in their training sessions. Now, what does that mean? That means no matter what he's doing or where he's at on the, wherever he's taking the threes from, he's hitting 79% of them. That's pretty amazing. There are guys that shoot better than that, or you will hear stories about people in practice hitting more shots or a higher percentage of shots than that. But those guys are like crazy three-point shooters, like Steve Novak or Ray Allen, people like this, Reggie Miller. For Jeremy to be doing that, if that's correct, and we have no reason to doubt that it's correct, that's very encouraging. Very encouraging. So you go check out that piece and see what they're saying about that. I mentioned this in a thread about this subject on ClutchFans. The most important thing in terms of being a shooter, whether you're a jump shooter from within the three-point range or outside of the line, is you must be able to repeat the shot. You have to be able to shoot the same shooting motion, shoot the same shot over and over again. That's what makes a great shooter, because it's the same thing over and over and over again. I know Ray Allen is tremendous at that. He has very little variability in his shots and his shooting motion. Once you have that, you're in great shape. You don't have to have a perfect motion. You don't have to have a mechanically perfect motion to be a great shooter. I know we've talked about all of this before, and the example I often bring up is Larry Bird. Larry Bird did not have a good mechanical shooting motion, but his shot was repeatable, and so he could become a great shooter even though he had a flawed motion. When we talk about Jeremy a lot, his three-point shooting, we often say he's got a hitch in his shot. He's got a mechanical flaw in his shot. Well, as I just said, that doesn't matter as long as you can shoot the same shot again and again and again. It's better if you don't have a hitch in your shot, but it doesn't matter if you can hit it. There was a guy that used to play. This was a long time ago. This was in the 80s and 90s, I believe. A guy named Michael Adams. He played for the Denver Nuggets. He was very short, but he was a pretty good three-point shooter. He had a huge hitch in his shot. And it was because I think it's almost like he had to jump forward to get enough strength to shoot a three-point shot because he was short. Well, it put just a gigantic hitch in his shot, but he could still shoot well. Jeremy has nothing even close to that. So I like what I'm hearing from Doc. This sounds good. And it's very encouraging. We know, and we've said, the most important thing, or one of the most important things Jeremy had to do in this 2013 summer is work on a three-point shot. That's probably the number one thing he had to do. Well, he's doing it. He's recovered from the shoulder contusion, chest contusion thing, and he's working on his game. Someone put a picture up of Jeremy shooting in Houston. Now, he's in California for the offseason. Pardon me. But he went to Houston for whatever reason. I don't know why he was in Houston. But they showed him working out and shooting a three-pointer in Houston. So it's good. He's working at it. He looks good. The picture of him, Jeremy had his shirt off, and he looks strong. He looks good. We talked about how the knee, from the knee surgery, wasn't up to full strength until late March. Well, now Jeremy, chest contusion good, knee looks good. Now he can get real skill work in the offseason. And it sounds like that's what he's doing. And that's great to hear. Really great to hear. The second most important thing with being able to shoot and three-pointers or just normal jump shots, you have to be able to do your motion in game situations. In other words, practice isn't the same as a game. And that's what Doc talked about. We're going to start using this new, better shot in game situations. Again, it's one thing to shoot there. Nobody's guarding you. Everything's cool. No noise, no nothing. It's a different thing to be able to do it in a game. And it sounds like that's what they're doing. So these guys know what they're doing. And it sounds like it's getting done. I know there's somebody in the ClutchFans, and I know other people will think this too. Well, last summer, Doc said that Jeremy's shot looked great too, so why do we believe him this time? It wasn't so great last year because Jeremy's not hurt this year. I'm sure Jeremy worked on his shot last year in the summer. The difference is Jeremy had to do a bunch of rehab on his knee last summer, and he doesn't have to do that this year. So not only does he have more time to work on his shot, his knee's 100% as far as we know. It wasn't the case last year. So even if you're practicing your shot, if you're in a game and your knee's not right, your knee's going to get weak and your shot's going to break down the form of it during games. Well, that shouldn't happen to Jeremy this year. Now, do I think Jeremy's going to come into the season next year and be like, a 45% three-point shooter? No. But his shooting should improve. And that's what you're looking for. Slow, steady improvement, which is what we saw from Jeremy in his three-point shot all of last year, 2012, 2013. We certainly saw his three-point shooting improve over last season. And that was even though his knee wasn't right for most of the season. So very, very good news. Okay, now there is a site. It is part of the True Hoop ESPN network named Red94. I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen it. I came across it as I started to do the work to make this video because I was looking up Dwight Howard. And while looking up Dwight Howard, I came across Red94, and they had a article that was going to give an assessment of Jeremy Lin. So I checked it out, and I'm like, well, cool. Let's talk about it here in this video. And I'll put the link for it. It's like assessing Jeremy Lin Part 1. Put the link for it in the video description. The name of the man who wrote the article, and he's the editor of the site, is Rahat Hook. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but his last name is H-U-Q. Hook. Looking at the article, he's a well-written guy. He mentions that he talked with somebody in the Rockets organization about Jeremy, so obviously he has contacts within the Rockets. I'll also put a link in the video description to his YouTube. You guys can check that out. Look, this sounds like somebody that knows what he's talking about, and somebody that has he has information that he can get from the organization. So we're always interested in helping you guys find more people for more information. The same way that we pointed out, certainly our guy Andy over at Jeremy Lin Intelligence. We want to point out as many people as we can so that you guys can get as much data and as many opinions on Jeremy that you can, and ones that are worthwhile. And Rahat Huk certainly sounds like he's in that category, and hopefully you guys will check out his stuff and like it. Now, I want to go over what Rahat said in his article about Jeremy Lin, assessing him of the part 1. Okay, one of the things that Rahat said was that he believed that Lin has possibly the lowest skill level of any starting point guard in the NBA. That sounds really harsh, but I understand where he's coming from in saying that. When you talk about skill level in a basketball player, you're not talking about their talent athletically. You're talking about 3 particular things in general: shooting, dribbling, and passing. Those are the most important skill sets, certainly for an offensive standpoint. Now, shooting. Is Jeremy a great shooter? No. He's working on that. He does need to get better at runners and floaters, which we've talked about. He's improving on that. Is he a great three-point shooter? No. We know that, and obviously that's being worked on and was improved during the year last year. However, when you compare Jeremy's ability to shoot with guys like Rajon Rondo or Ricky Rubio, he's clearly a better shooter. There's no question about that. I mean, he's definitely a better shooter than those 2 players, particularly from distance. I'm talking about jump shots here, not in-close shots. Now, Rondo has some very nice floaters and runners. So does Rubio. Well, Rubio's not a great finisher, though. But what Rahat's talking about is Jeremy as a complete package. Shooting, dribbling, passing, those things all combined, he might be the worst of any starting point guard. Maybe. But as I pointed out, he's definitely a better shooter than Rajon Rondo and Ricky Rubio. Rondo, though, is improving as a shooter. And so that's what's important to understand here. These aren't static categories. Guys can improve on these things, and they do improve if they're serious. And remember, Jeremy was hurt all year. His knee wasn't right the entire year. So he couldn't always work on this stuff. I mean, his body can only do so much. It just wasn't as strong as it had been in New York and in Golden State. Okay, dribbling. We know Jeremy isn't a great dribbler. And part of that, a big part of it, in my opinion, is because he didn't play point guard in college, as Rahat points out, and that's right. He played shooting guard. He played point guard in high school. Shooting guard and point guard aren't the same thing, and certainly when it comes to dribbling ability, particularly in a place like the Ivy League Conference. Jeremy didn't have to be a great dribbler in college. Now he needs to be a much better dribbler. And that's going to take work. That's going to take work. So, there is something to what Rahat is saying. Jeremy does need work on shooting, and he does need work on dribbling. However, again, let's look at some of the other point guards here. Mario Chalmers, who is now a 2-time champion for the Miami Heat, is not a good dribbler. He has flaws in his dribbling. Or, somebody might say, they say dribbling is your handle. Mario's handle isn't that tight. It's not that great. Is it better than Jeremy's? Yeah, it is, probably so, but not amazingly so. In other words, not everybody that is a starting point guard in the NBA has the same level of dribbling ability as Chris Paul or Steve Nash. They're not all the same. Chalmers is on the lower end of that scale of starting point guards, and so is Jeremy. Jeremy does need to work on this. But again, this is somebody that didn't play a lot in the NBA before last year. 2 years ago with the Knicks. And he came into the league as a combo guard, or certainly came out of Harvard as a combo guard. So it's not a shock that he needs to work at it. Is he working at it? Yeah, there's no question. I mean, it's something I'll talk about in a little bit. I mean, Jeremy has definitely improved his ability to dribble over last season. I think some of it was the knee, just because he can make better moves now. And I think some of it was just pure ball handling. I think some of it was just drills, working on the left hand, etc. And it's absolutely worked. And it can continue to work. He can continue to improve on that during this summer and in the off seasons to come. The three things that Jeremy has to work at, the most important things, I believe, are dribbling, three-point shooting, and work on your runners and floaters. Work on your shots around the basket. That's imperative for a guard. You have to be able to have those little shots, the teardrops, all of that. And those are the three things, if I were him, I would be spending the most time on this summer. You might not be able to do all three of them this summer. You might have to just focus on one thing. If there was one thing I would focus on, it would be three-point shooting. Because worst case, James Harden can play some point guard. Worst case, you don't need to do a lot of runners and floaters, but you need to be able to shoot the three-pointer in the Houston offense. And that looks like that's what Jeremy's working on the most, and that's what he should work on. If I had to pick one of those three things, that's what I'd be working on. Okay, final skill set. Shooting, dribbling, finally passing. Jeremy is a terrific passer. He is absolutely a better passer than a number of the other starting point guards in the league. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So shooting and dribbling, not as great. Passing, very good. So that helps his overall skill score, right? Jeremy has excellent vision. As we talked about the entire year, 2012, 2013, Jeremy has the ability to make half-court passes and full-court passes better than anybody I can think of in the league. The only other person I can think that's even close to him is LeBron. And LeBron's huge. LeBron's big. I mean, it's a different leverage and ease of making passes full court and half court when you're that big. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but I've never seen anybody who is that good at half court and full court passes consistently as Jeremy Lin is. Nobody. Maybe Magic Johnson or Larry Bird, but they didn't do it as much. Jeremy had so many of those passes last year. It was incredible. Some of them were turnovers, not a lot of them. Most of them were completions, and they led to easy baskets. So his skill level as a passer is phenomenal. It's huge. No looks, simple passes, pick and roll. People say he doesn't know how to make the simple pass. Yeah, he does. It's just not usually what he chooses to do. And, he can work on that. He can have fewer turnovers, which is a combination of the dribbling, and sometimes he'll make the wrong pass. But skill as a passer is very high for him. One other thing I want to mention in terms of skills, and this is a skill, is the ability to play in the pick and roll. Now, when you talk about a basketball player's skill level, you don't think about pick and roll. You think shooting, dribbling, passing, which is what I mentioned. But Jeremy is extremely good in the pick and roll, and that's a skill. It takes work to be able to get that good. So I would place him as a pick and roll guard above a number of other guards, without a doubt, because he's excellent at that. That's what he did in New York. That's what Mike D'Antoni realized Jeremy could do. That's what he excels at, and that is absolutely a skill. It involves dribbling, it involves passing, but it's its own skill. You have to know when to get the guy the ball. You have to know when you need to take the ball to the hoop. These types of things. That's not easy. It's not easy to do. It also takes decision-making skill. And so I just want to give Jeremy credit on that. So the summary of the skill discussion. Again, Rahat said Jeremy might be the least skilled starting point guard in the NBA. There is something to what Rahat is saying. There is an argument there. He might be right. In terms of if you gave a 1 through 10 score, 10 being the best on those three areas, shooting, dribbling, passing, and you got Jeremy's score compared with every other starting point guard score, it might be the lowest. I could see that. I'm not sure about that, but it's certainly possible. I could see it being the case. However, a player is not based on just what their skills are. And, there are guys with phenomenal verticals and they can't play. Or they can't play in the moment. They're not good with other teammates. They're not clutch. Jeremy is a type of player where the sum of his parts is much greater than the individual parts. He just, he has different variables that make him great. We know how clutch he is. He's improved a ton already, which means that you think he's going to be able to improve a lot more. He's a gamer. Gamer is somebody that plays best in the game. They're not a great practice player. They don't look great. You don't think they're going to be that good, but when the game's on, they're a good player. And that's what Jeremy Lin is. Okay, moving on. Here's the next thing that Rahat said, or one of the things that he said, again, in evaluating Jeremy. He went over that Jeremy can't dribble at different heights like Chris Paul or Steve Nash can. That's true. He can't. Not every guard in the NBA, starting point guard, can do that. If you can dribble at different heights, it's much more difficult to steal the ball from you. You have much more control of offensive flow because you can give the defense different looks and they don't know what you're going to do. They don't, if they kind of come and they think that you usually are dribbling in a certain way at a certain height, a certain angle, well, they're going to wait for that and then they're going to steal the ball from you. Part of the reason why it's so difficult to take the ball from Steve Nash or Chris Paul is that skill, is the dribbling at different heights, different levels, leaning over, low to the ground, standing up tall. That's what we mean, different heights. Jeremy's not at that. He can't do that. But again, neither can a whole bunch of point guards. Is George Hill somebody that's great at dribbling at different heights? I'm not sure about that. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I definitely know he can't do it like Chris Paul and Steve Nash can do it. So there's not a uniform ability at starting point guards in the NBA to dribble at different heights, whereas everybody can do it and Jeremy can't do it. That doesn't exist. It's a continuum. Jeremy's probably on the lower end of that, but there are other people on the low end of that too. And that's the easiest way to say it. And I believe Rahat got that information in talking with whomever he spoke with in the Rockets organization. Now, Rahat also said, moving on, that Jeremy relies on blowing by guys with his first step in order to get to the basket or for his primary offense. And that's true. He does do that. Jeremy's first step is excellent. It's phenomenal, actually. And he does rely heavily on it. That's not a shock. I mean, LeBron James, earlier in his career, relied a lot on his first step. Now, Jeremy's not LeBron, and he can't score like that. But the point is, when you have a great asset, you're going to lean on it. LeBron could get by almost anybody you wanted to when he was younger in his career. He still is good at it, not quite as good in terms of his first step isn't as fast as it used to be. And he's bigger, so it's not as easy now for LeBron to get to the lane. Well, that's why LeBron starts working on his post-up game. In other words, you do what you can do as long as it works for you. And then once it stops working, then you work on other things. This is like Jordan developing a post-up game or a better mid-range jumper as his career went on. He did it because he had to do it, because he couldn't get to the lane all the time anymore. If Jeremy's able to beat guys off the dribble with his first step, then why develop anything else? You don't need anything else because nobody can stop you on your first step. What we talked about last year a lot was that we wanted to see Jeremy develop more offensive moves besides the first step. I'm talking about, specific setup dribbles, changing pace on the dribble, stop and go moves. Jeremy does a little move, where he pivots and reverse pivots and then shoots the jump shot after he gets into the lane. Jeremy needs to work on that in terms of perimeter moves so that he can beat his man, so that he can score against his man without only relying on the first step. Can he improve that? Yeah, of course he can. He's already improved that. He improved that within 2012, 2013. He needs more work at it. But it's something that can be improved. And it's just repetition. There's certain particular things you can do, and he needs to work at those things. There are specific moves and techniques, crossovers, different things that he can work on. He's gotten better at them, and there's no reason to think he won't get even better at them, particularly with the knee healthy again. If you're a guy that relies on quickness and quick movement, and you have a bad leg, or your leg isn't 100% strength, you're not going to have a lot of moves. It's like watching Dwayne Wade in the playoffs. Dwayne Wade was great during the year, and then he hurt his knee a couple times. And then in the playoffs, he didn't look that good. Why? Couldn't make the same moves, or he couldn't consistently make them. So, again, Rahat has a point. There's no doubt about it. Jeremy does rely on his first step heavily, but he's beginning to learn other things, and he really hasn't had to learn anything else yet. Now that he's going to have to do that, I would expect him to be able to do that. Next point by Rahat. Lin can't play slow. We've talked about this all year. And again, Rahat's right about this. Jeremy doesn't play well when he's playing slow. And it is because of a skill deficit. So Rahat is right about that. We've talked about this the entire season. Jeremy plays fast because he plays best when he's playing fast. And as we talked about in the playoffs, when everybody plays fast, it's harder for Jeremy. And that's what happens in the playoffs. That's why, again, Jeremy gets tired because he's playing 100 miles an hour because he has to. He does need to get better skill so that he can play at different speeds. But If you have something good, then that's what you're going to do. Again, so it's, if you're the fastest guy and you play better than everybody else fast, well, you're going to play fast. I mean, if that works, then that's what you're going to do. Similar to if Jeremy can beat guys off the first step, then, well, why don't you just do that if they can't stop it? Jeremy's young. He's 24 years old. He hasn't played a lot in the NBA in terms of actual playing time. You would expect him to develop so that he can play at a slower pace. No reason to think that won't get better. Now, is it ever going to be perfect? Is he going to be the absolute flawless player at point guard? No, but he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be, and that's the important thing. Jeremy is able to play at a slower pace when he's playing pick and roll. He still has to improve on it. He is very good at it. He still has to improve on it. But that's the one area of his game when I've seen him play where he doesn't need to play quick. He can let the play develop a little bit. Sometimes he still rushes it, but he doesn't have to play as fast off of that as he does in everything else, at least from what I have seen. Okay. Next point by Rahat. Lin can't drive to his left. Look, Lin is not as good driving to his left as driving to his right. I don't think there's any doubt about that. However, we charted this. We watched this all through the season. By the end of the season, by the end of the 2012-2013 season, Jeremy Lin was doing much better going to his left than he had done previously in New York and with the Rockets. He got to a point where he was able to make real offensive moves going to his left, not just passing it off, as Rahat says. He was able to get to the rim, if I remember correctly, going to his left, certainly able to set up a shot for himself going to his left. So this is a little bit overstated. To say that Lin can't go left at all, that's not accurate. I don't believe it's accurate because we've seen things contrary to that. And like the other stuff above, there's no reason Jeremy can't improve upon that. He also already improved upon it. Why can't he continue to improve upon it? It's one thing with Jeremy. Jeremy, he works hard. He works hard. Very hard. That's how he was able to improve so much in 2012, 2013 during the year, even though his leg wasn't 100%. The improvement that he made on his three-point shot during 2012, 2013 should give hope to anybody that's a fan of his and or a critic. If that guy can improve that skill that much within a year when he was on a new team and with a leg that wasn't right, well, why can't he improve everything else? When you see that level of improvement, you think this guy might be able to improve dramatically in other areas too. Okay, next point by Rahat. Lin sometimes finishes on the wrong leg when he's doing layups. We've mentioned this the entire year. What this means is if you're doing a left-handed layup, you are supposed to jump off of your right foot. That's the way that the placement is supposed to go. If you jump off the left foot, your balance is all messed up. And I said, or if you're doing a layup from the left-handed side, you're supposed to shoot with your left hand, not your right hand. The reason why this is important, as I've mentioned during videos during the season, is one, your balance is better, so your shot's going to be better. Number two is you give yourself a better opportunity to not get your shot blocked if you're jumping properly. You can get better height on your jump if you're jumping with your right leg coming from a left-handed side on a layup than with your left leg. Also, you're further away. If you're on the left-hand side and you're doing a left-hand layup, if you shoot with your left hand, you're further away from a shot blocker in general than if you're shooting with your right hand. It's easier to get close to you and block your shot if you're shooting with your right hand coming on the left-handed side most of the time. So he does need to work on this. He does need to work on this, and he needs to work on everything else that we've talked about so far. There's no question about it. Jeremy's a player with a tremendous amount of potential. Huge amount of potential. That's what people like Nate Silver, the statistician, and other people have pointed out. There's no question about that. But he's got a lot of work to do. I think because Jeremy's healthy now, because Jeremy's got his contract now, no more sleeping on the couch, no more worrying about, are you going to be in the NBA? Now he can really start to work on his game. He doesn't have to think about those things anymore. Look, Houston was a very tough first year for Jeremy. His body wasn't right. There were a lot of doubts about him, including on the coaching staff or the organization. Well, we know that. We heard that. We saw that in terms of playing time. But he got through all of it. He played every single regular season game. He improved all through the year. He got his body right. This is a guy that gets it done. So it gives you confidence that he will continue to get it done. And now that he's got a couple other things under his belt, like some job security and some money, well, now he can focus that energy on improving his game. And I expect that to happen. And I think that's what's happening right now over this summer with the shooting coach. The next point that Rahat makes, he says that Lin will never be a floor general like Mark Jackson and other excellent point guards. A floor general is a point guard, just someone that directs the offense, right? I would say that at least 2/3 of the starting point guards in this league right now will not be as good as Mark Jackson or Steve Nash. And again, you don't have to be that good in order to succeed on a team and as a player. Mark Jackson was a phenomenal point guard. He wasn't athletic, but he had pretty good size. I want to say 6'3". He had tremendous skill level. He was incredibly skilled. He played for Indiana. He played for New York. I think those are the two main teams that he played for. And he's like third all-time in NBA in assists. So most guys aren't going to be at that level. They're not. But you don't have to be. Again, Mario Chalmers, two-time defending champion for Miami Heat, will never come close to what Mark Jackson was. Jeremy doesn't have to be Mark Jackson to be a good player. He's more of a scorer than Mark Jackson was. He's more athletic than Mark Jackson was. Can he run an offense like Mark Jackson? No. And he probably never will be able to. But he doesn't have to. He doesn't need to be able to do that. To be a good player and to be a contributor on a championship contender. A starter. Next point. Rahat said that Kevin McHale, the coach, mismanaged Lin during the year. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, we certainly know that Andy, Jeremy Lin Intelligence, had the video about that. I know pretty much all of you guys feel that way, and you know what, I've made videos about that before. So, I mean, Rahat's basically saying, yeah, he hurt Jeremy's confidence and, pulling him and not playing him enough. Yeah, he did, but they also worked with Jeremy's body. They didn't play Jeremy too many minutes. I think that was a mistake that Mike D'Antoni made. And I think that's part of why Jeremy hurt his knee. He was a guy that wasn't used to playing hardly any minutes, and now you're playing 40 minutes a game. He wasn't ready for that. His body wasn't ready for that. So I give McHale and the coaching staff credit, and the staff, including the trainers, credit because they didn't play Jeremy too much. But when Jeremy was ready to play more minutes, when his knee was back to full strength or close to it in late March, then they started playing him more minutes. That's how it should have been done. So I wish Jeremy would have played more minutes, but maybe his body wasn't ready for it. Not only was his knee not 100% healthy, again, Jeremy plays very fast. That's draining. It's like Chris Anderson, the Birdman for Miami. Chris Anderson can't play 40 minutes a night because he plays too hard. He's only going to be able to play about 20, 25 minutes, and then he's going to gas out. He's going to be fatigued. Jeremy has a quality of that to him because he has had to play so quick. As Jeremy's leg is better now, and as he develops his offensive skill set, he'll be able to play 40 minutes a night or close to it, and it won't be a problem. And that's what we started to see at the end of the year. Rahat made a comment, not in his piece, but in the comments below that, where he said that Lin played like a chicken with its head cut off in the playoffs. Yeah, he kind of did. And this is what we said, everybody was playing fast, and so Jeremy didn't have as much of an advantage and all this. But look, let's go easy on this guy. This is a guy that was playing in his first 2 playoff games in his career. If I went through the list of people that didn't play well in their first 2 playoff games in the NBA history, there'd be a very long list. It's a different thing. It's a different deal, and you have to get used to it. So I'm not going to, I'm not going to go crazy about that. Now, you guys all know that the Lin haters, that's their last hope. He's not good in the playoffs. You hear it. You've heard it. We've all heard it. I thought, I'm not going to get too worked up about that Jeremy didn't look great in the 1.5 games that he played before he got hurt in the playoffs. He played against the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. Him and James Harden in a very competitive game basically carried the Rockets to a win. And I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the way through the year it was. Jeremy had 29, 8, and 7 against Russell Westbrook and the Thunder, and that was a very competitive game. The Thunder were playing very hard in that game. Maybe not quite playoff intensity, but it was very close. So I know Jeremy can play well. I know Jeremy can play well under pressure. I know Jeremy can handle that situation. That doesn't mean he's going to handle it perfectly every single time. Jeremy's still a very inconsistent player, like many young players. The only players in the NBA who aren't inconsistent that play at a high level are big-time stars. If you are consistently good, you're a star. Well, Jeremy's not there yet, even though he's shown flashes of that. He still has a long way to go. And that's normal. I mean, that's what you expect from a 24-year-old who wasn't playing at all a 1.5 years ago and wasn't playing this position coming out of college. There's an adjustment period, and Jeremy's going through that. All right, so the summary of what Rahat said and Red94, that article, part 1, assessing Lin. Just my overall feel that I think Rahat is an intelligent guy. Obviously, he has contacts within the organization. I don't think he's somebody that spent a lot of time watching Jeremy in New York. In other words, I think this is somebody that has spent more time closely observing Jeremy now that he's with Houston. We followed Jeremy before that. We followed Jeremy in New York. You needed to see what Jeremy did in New York and study it to be able to compare that Jeremy Lin versus the Jeremy Lin of last year. For two reasons. One, he was hurt. His knee was not right in the first year with Houston. Clearly. Secondly, different system. If you looked at Jeremy Lin in Houston, it's easy to say he's not that good. Wow, this guy's overhyped. If you looked at Jeremy Lin in New York and saw what they did and how they used him, you'd say, wow, this guy's got a lot of ability. It's apples to oranges. And I think that's important to understand when you evaluate Jeremy Lin. You must know that his knee wasn't right for most of this year. And he was playing in as bad of an offensive scheme as there could be for his talents. But as I've told you guys many times, I like that. I don't like that Jeremy was hurt, but I do like that he's playing in a system that's not made for him, because he's going to have to get better at the things he's not good at. And that's going to help him become a complete player. That's what it's all about for anybody in anything. As I've told you guys before, if you're a weightlifter and you love to bench press, but you don't like to work on your legs, you need to get in and be made to do squats. You need to work on your legs. You need to work on things you're not good at, rather than going in and bench pressing every time you go into the gym. And that's what this was like for Jeremy. He was put in an uncomfortable position, and he got better because of it. That's what I love about Jeremy. No whining, no complaining, just kept at it, and he kept improving. That's why I have so much confidence in him, combined with his ability. This is a worker. Jeremy is a grinder. He's going to keep working until he finds the solution. Okay. Finally, with talking about Rahat, what he said, his assessment was fair. It was fair, and it was good. He made a lot of good points, much better than most of the criticism you will see about Lin around the internet. Much better. I mean, leaps and bounds better. So we appreciate that. That's why, go check this guy out. He has a good idea of what he's talking about. I think in the overall assessment from me, I think Rahat was a little bit too harsh on Lin. A little bit too unsupportive of Lin. Again, the sum total of what Lin is better than his constituent parts. It's better than a weak dribble or poor shooting, etc. He's better than that when you get him out on the court, when you get him in a clutch situation. Look, throughout this last year, we heard people like Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, praise Lin, say that Lin and Harden might be the best backcourt, say that Lin's like Steve Nash. Now, that might be a little over the top, but he's good. There's real ability there. It's just something that he has to continue to work at. A sculptor working on a stone, you got to keep hammering the stone until it's the shape that you want. Jeremy has a lot of stones still to hammer, but there's real artwork underneath that stone because of what Jeremy does have in terms of ability and poise and clutchness. There's real skill there, and skill that can become something special. How special, I don't know. Again, maybe he's not going to be Mark Jackson. He's not going to be Steve Nash, but he doesn't have to be. He'd still be a very good player in this league. A special player. And I see no reason why he can't become that. Which is what I've said many times before to you guys. And again, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to just, I'm not going to make stuff up. Even though these are videos for Lin fans. And I like Jeremy. But you have to tell the truth. And that's what we're doing here. Okay, that's it. It's great to make this video. I talked to somebody. I made a video about Kobe versus LeBron the other day, comparing those two and their careers and their accomplishments as the lead player on their team. You guys can check that out if you haven't seen it. But I was talking to somebody over there. Might have been the True Picked. I can't remember who it was. I think it was True Picked. And he's like, hey, Jeremy Lin stuff. And I was like, I'm going to make another Lin video soon. So this is the video. My summer's going well. What's up with you guys? Want to hear what's up all over the world? I know for some of you, it's not summer, it's winter, like Melody Ting and other people in Australia and stuff. So let us know what's up. I'm just, said I'm doing my thing. You guys know I've got a bunch of health issues. I'm working on that. It's very hot where I'm at right now, but it's all good. Yeah, it's cool. We will continue to update you on Jeremy and the team as more information comes in. It said free agency begins on July 1st, and that's not very long from now, 5 days or whatever it is, and it's going to be exciting. If Houston can get Dwight Howard, then everything changes. I mean, you're looking then at a very real contender possibility then. Very real. I mean, that would be incredible. As I said, I think there's a very good chance it's going to happen. We have to keep our eyes open, and we'll see what happens. Okay, comments below. Thumbs up, thumbs down on the video. We will put information in the video description below the video player, so you can come and join the Conservative New Media Facebook group, which has over 2,500 members and growing. We've had a whole bunch of people join recently, and that's awesome. That's great. Thanks for doing that. I am Paul F. Villarreal, the NBA expert. Thanks for watching Conservative New Media. We strive to be the #1 Jeremy Lin YouTube fan channel. Summer is going well for Lin so far, and the team, let's just hope it keeps up, and we will be learning more shortly.